what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I've got a full house. Welcome, Mac.
Good evening.
And Gio.
What is good, guys?
As we are getting closer and closer to the start of the Premier League season, we are continuing our preseason coverage, continuing with the biggest club in England, Manchester United. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is @houseof_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. But let's get straight into it, guys. Man U, of course, last season, although what looked like was to the start, another rough season for Man U with a string of poor defeats. They finished third place, 75 points, earning a spot in next year's Champions League competition. Marcus Rashford, of course, having a great bounce-back season after quite a poor one with Man U. He finished top scorer with 17 goals in the Premier League and 30 in all competitions. Like I mentioned, third place in the league, FA Cup runners-up, EFL Cup winners, and even a quarterfinal appearance in the UEFA Europa League last season. Straight there, Gio, with your fresh Man U jersey, what were your thoughts as a Man U fan of last year's season?
I think it's a tale of where you finish at the end of the season. I think like we just mentioned earlier, in our last podcast, Mo Salah had 19 in the Premier League, 30 overall as well. So it just really depends on where you finish at the end of the season, kind of almost the viewer's eyes go to and kind of label it whether it was a good or bad season. I think in terms of Mo Salah's standards, I think it was a bad season. I think on top of where they finished, it was a bad season. But I think it was just the consistency that Rashford was doing it at. One, he was scoring goals at quite the timely fashion, scoring quite clutch goals as well. Those had a factor in, how important his goals was. So I think, definitely a bounce back season. I think obviously rough start, but there's a point in stretch in time where they were, unbeaten at home for quite some time, and just the consistency. I talked about it in the Liverpool podcast, is the consistency and how you achieve where you get to. And I think Man U kind of did it. Obviously rocky at the end a bit as well, but kept composure to close it out and to be able to finish above such a hot Newcastle team and to do it, without even, the last day, closing it out with like a week to go, 2 weeks to go. I think was a huge win in terms of team morale.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely looked like it was going to be a rough season to start with. And then, of course, a string of very consistent performances and timely goals for Man U by Rashford. There was a period in time in the middle of the season, I think it was after the World Cup, where Man U at times couldn't really find a way to score, and we had some questions about how they would find goals. But given how well they perform in that sort of middle section as well, like you said, Gio, especially their record at home, that kind of pushed them over the line, and eventually, of course, third place finish. I think we can all agree that's a great achievement by Ten Hag in this first season. Mac, similar question, I guess. What were your takes on Man U's season last year?
Overall, I thought it was a very positive season, definitely ahead of schedule. I think it was a set of 3 different runs of form, beginning the season very poor, kind of pre-World Cup, post-World Cup, that section together was phenomenal. And it definitely was in line for, as Gio highlighted earlier, Rashford. He was their talisman, their best player last year. If you look at kind of their goal scorers in the Premier League, behind him at 17, the next one was Bruno Fernandes at 8, next one Jadon Sancho at 6. So you can argue that it really was a one-man show through large sections of the season, where it was kind of Marcus Rashford scoring a goal, having a great defense. And that's really what saw them out for large sections, to which towards the end of the season, as you both highlighted, they started to falter. So it was kind of a very much a wave of a ride. But overall, if you look at from where the season began with the whole Cristiano Ronaldo era, that whole situation taking place, him being moved out, players like Harry Maguire, now David De Gea through the offseason, a lot of transition in the club. Again, this is definitely a theme towards these the top of the Premier League teams that are in a transitional period. Manchester United is definitely above them, and still managed to finish third in the Premier League. So it's overall, I think, a great season. I do actually have to take that and the opinion that this was probably too early and too successful for them, because now they have no choice but to go up. If it would have been, I would argue that it would actually have been better for them last year to finish fifth, to then this year coming in after all those transitional changes to be in a position to then challenge for a Champions League position. Because now, if they drop back, if there's any regression as they continue to try to transform the club, it's going to look poorly on Ten Hag. So even though last year I thought was great, I think it might actually be, it might put them in a position to be kind of at that demise of their own success in some way. So maybe that's just me being a negative, Manchester United fan and hating and hoping the worst for Manchester United. That's what Gio might say. But I think if they were so successful last year, now they have no choice but to at least match, if not improve. So it's a little bit difficult.
I don't necessarily agree or disagree with what you said, Mag. I think, of course, you want to see a line of progression for Man U, but I think more importantly than where they finish next season, which we'll talk about, the sort of the consistency of his system that he wants to implement, and of course we're going to talk about it with their transfers in and out of the club, will be a major sort of factor in if Man U wants to continue with Ten Hag. And of course, now that his second season is here, there's been a lot of transfers out. Elanga, Alex Telles, Zina Iqbal, Phil Jones, Tuanzebe, and David De Gea have gone out. And of course, players in, the big ones, Mason Mount, Andre Onana, Johnny Evans on free, and the most recent one, Hojlund, coming in from Serie A. Ten Hag's players that he wanted, and I think he's got. So that's going to be a big bonus for his, I guess, team selection moving next season. And so Gio, straight off of that, have the needs been addressed with these players coming in, or what are your takes on these transfers?
No, I think a lot of it has been addressed in terms of having a striker, and I think the Hojlund signing will be key. Just his style of play, not too fancy by any means. Very stocky player. Relies heavily on speed. And his physicality. So, I think he just makes a lot of good runs in behind. You don't really see that from the Man U front three. So hopefully, his play style, his movement, kind of triggers the team to do a lot more of that. Whether it be Rashford or whether it be Garnacho, whether it be Sancho, Anthony, any one of those. I think a lot of more, backdoor runs would be quite helpful for them. But yeah, no, I definitely love the signing. But I think obviously there are parts that are missing. I think the midfield still needs to be addressed. Just key into the depth of the midfield. Obviously there are rumors, but we'll get into that. Just you saw the drop off in quality when Casemiro was injured or he was out on cards or anything of that nature. Obviously, that physical presence wasn't there. So that wasn't there. And then when he came back, it took him a couple of games to kind of get reacquainted to the pace, to the physicality. So, those are other games where points may or may not have been dropped. So obviously finding someone who is able to play with Casemiro with similar attributes or to play in place of Casemiro when he's either taken off the pitch or serving, card suspensions, which obviously we were not expecting as he does not receive cards in La Liga, but I guess things are different here in the Prem. But yeah, no, I think addressing that part of the midfield is still very crucial.
Yeah, no, I agree. Eventually, when he does serve his bans, definitely needs a player there. But no, I off the top, I do really like the signings that have come in. Mason Mount, of course, a player that's regarded very highly. maybe not by Chelsea fans anymore, but around the league, I think he still can do a job. Still young enough. Andre Onana, big signing, huge in terms of how Ten Hag wants to play, and that's going to be really interesting to see how he fits in with the team. And of course, Højlund, I believe it's the right move for him in the long term. Now, I'm not sure exactly it's the right move for Man U in the short term because you still need a proven out-and-out striker that can hit the ground running. And like we've talked about before, the Premier League is a different monster. You gotta really, unless you're Haaland, and maybe Højlund with his similarities to Haaland can hit the ground running. It's gonna be tough for him. So we'll see. But Mac, what are your thoughts?
I think I absolutely loved their offseason. I think they addressed areas of concern. I see the evolution of their playstyle, of how they want to be able to change, particularly with Onana and his kind of immediate impact of how he wants to be able to play the ball, being able to willing to play short, connected passes, being great with his feet. I absolutely love, and this is definitely counter to what Manchester United would have done under previous management since Sir Alex Ferguson. If instead of signing Harry Kane, who probably has 2 more good years left at best, and coming into a whole different situation, you're sliding somebody for potential who's a whole lot cheaper. Because I think I saw a breakdown of what he eventually will cost, combining if you were to kind of average out his wage bills on top of the transfer fee, it's less than half of what you paid for either Osimhen or Harry Kane over the course of the next 4 or 5 years. And on top of that, Højlund would be just arriving at his prime potentially. So it could go horribly because he's still young, he's very raw, he's not very technically gifted and kind of showing with skill on the ball right now, but he's a young player with a whole lot of potential. And if Ten Hag's able to mold him right, it could be absolute steal. So I think this very much is in line to how I would want to see, if I'm a Manchester United fan, my club progress and willing to bet on younger players and see if we can be able to build something more sustainable and not the Band-Aid solutions, which they've been known for since Fergie. So I love what they've done in the offseason. The more so, I think will be interesting to see how, in terms of adjustment of play, these players moving in will make. Is it going to go a complete flip the coin where last year it was David De Gea to Wout Weghorst long, let's see if we can bring it down and have its tight ship defensively, versus are they going to try to kind of play through possession and only play out the back, not really look long because they don't have the technical ability to be able to kind of control possession? And what impact is that going to have on the players around them? Can Rashford be successful? Can Sancho be successful in that type of system? We don't know. We still have yet to find out. But I think this offseason sets them and is the next logical step into what I think, if you'd ask Ten Hag what is his grand plan for Manchester United, every single one of these players, except for Johnny Evans, that was a joke, you put that in, ha ha ha. Every other player was a natural step in who they're going to be and how they're going to be as a club going forward, and what type of play style they want to be able to put on the pitch.
Interesting. I mean, of course, that being said, the transfer season is still on, and there are links away for players that we just mentioned. Harry Maguire, he's been stripped of the captaincy, and there are links of him moving to another Premier League club. I think West Ham are a team that's very interested. On top of that, I think Fred and McTominay, based on sort of the most recent rumors that I've seen, have been linked with moves away from the club, which could help as well, maybe clear up some space for more signings, as you know, there are still links to Sofyan Amrabat from Fiorentina, from Man U. So, Gio, if you're a Man U fan, what do you think is the priority in the next couple of weeks as the season is about to start?
Get rid of the players you can get rid of, one, and then definitely, if you can, if the opportunity is there, sign a Rambat. I think he's 26. He's a defensive midfield. He can learn a lot from a player like Casemiro, who obviously is aging. And in 2 years' time, he might not be here. So, for someone to fill in those shoes and to be able to kind of soak in that information at the age of 26, leading into his prime, which is, the ending of Casemiro's contract here at Man U, I think would be hugely beneficial to both the club and the player. So I think getting him in, should be the next priority. Hopefully getting rid of, Maguire, kind of take the hit there, take the hit with Fred. McTominay, if he's willing to stay and willing to be kind of that rotational piece to sort of be, a key staple guy who, kind of comes off the bench, then absolutely, or start those cup games or whatever the case may be for him, then yeah, I think I would still, be able to keep him. I don't think his wages are far too high. So yeah, I think that's, kind of the final steps going in to the season. I think should kind of get signed, sealed, and delivered, as soon as possible.
Okay, same question to you, Mac.
Definitely, they need a lot of outgoings. Like, for example, we didn't even bring up Donny van de Beek, which, if you look last year, he actually played 3 fewer games in the Premier League than Cristiano Ronaldo, which is absolutely obscene if you think about his time at Manchester United. So you need a lot of exits, but at the same time, it's tough to be able to balance that and make sure that you still have enough depth in the squad, because there is that Manchester United tax. As soon as a player is linked with them, suddenly going to cost a lot more. Players leaving Man U because of the wage bill issue, you're going to be receiving a whole lot less. And under the cloud of the change of ownership as well, it puts a lot of stress of like how much money are they willing to be able to tack onto the books to be able to make more changes. So I think that a midfield signing, I think, is key. If you were to move out McTominay or Fred, I think that has to be addressed like immediately, because you need that depth. Because yes, Casemiro is going to get red cards. There's going to be injuries. Something's going to happen, and you want to have flexibility there. I know you both always laugh at this, but it's weird because it feels like Real Madrid must have paid more into the referee union in La Liga than Manchester United pay in the Premier League, which is weird because it seems like they would pay the most based off of what we know about certain referees throughout the history, if we know that. Let's be real. But either way, back to this current season, I think more so, again, a midfield depth is absolutely key. The tough part, though, and teams that we've highlighted thus far, such as Liverpool, through our previews, as well as going into other teams in the Premier League, they're in heavy competition. Everybody's looking for that kind of deep line playmaking midfielder, that destroyer in midfield. So they're going to be in tough, steep competition. So I wouldn't be surprised if you might have to let go of a Van de Beek, Fred, and McTominay just to have enough money to bring in one player, which then further puts them in a position where they're going to not have as much depth on the team. So it's very much a catch-22 in some ways, where you're damned if you do because you're so thin, but you're damned if you don't because you don't have enough quality on the team to have rotation in the squad and still compete at the highest level. So be interesting to see. But as I said, I think midfield is definitely the key for Man U.
Yeah, and of course, Champions League this season, depth is definitely going to be needed, and especially those other competitions as well. So interesting to see, and we'll definitely come back and revisit that. But let's take a break here, boys, and then we'll be back with more Man U coverage. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue our coverage of Manchester United's preseason, and now we're going to discuss how they could potentially line up with their starting 11. And throughout last season and into the preseason, most of Manchester United's games have been a sort of 4-3-3 formation with Casemiro dropping back a little more as a defensive midfielder, and then you have 2 other midfielders in front of him. Funnily enough, I haven't really seen too many links to any defenders for Man U. Of course, we got Onana, who's going to be starting in net. So it looks like Dalot, Varane, Lisandro Martinez, and Luke Shaw will be the back line. And so it really is the question of how they line up in midfield and moving forward. So Gio, as a Man U fan here, please give us your take on how they will line up, or they could possibly line up.
Obviously, if they want to play more, based on matchups, I think sort of that right back spot will be based on the matchup of the day. If there's someone that needs to be almost man-marked in that sense, it's going to be Basaka. If they play like a Madrid or anything like that. If they draw Madrid and they have to play them in the Champions League, guess who's starting? Not Dalot. So that's going to be interchangeable there. I think, obviously, with the addition of Mason Mount, as opposed, in the midfield trio, I think it's going to be obviously Casemiro, and then the 2 in front of him, Bruno, Mason Mount, and then the front 3, another toss-up. Hodgson's definitely going to take some time to get acquainted. So I think, is it going to be... It's going to be a mix, obviously, 1A, 1B, maybe Garnacho, Sancho, let Rashford play in the middle to start, and then Antony on the other side. Until Haaland kind of gets acquainted, and then you kind of push Sancho out, let Rashford play on the wing where he's quite comfortable with, and then kind of play around. I think with the new additions, I think they have a lot to play with. I think that's almost a good problem to have with the level of competition you're going to have to play. So yeah, I think that more or less will be the starting 11 going into the first game of the season.
Okay. Mac, what are your thoughts?
I'm on board with what Gio's saying in terms of at the start of the season. I think that you got to give Hodgland time to be able to adjust. You want to be able to bring in kind of still let Rashford play as a striker because he's definitely exceeded in that role, and I think that you have a lot of questions for him defensively. He's playing on the wing. However, I have an interesting pitch as how I think that they should play when they're at their best this season, playing against the best teams. So I'm going to use this very similar lineup to what Gio had highlighted, but of course Wan-Bissaka for Dalot, especially in those bigger games. But I think you're going to see a lot more, and you could see a lot more of Bruno playing out on the right wing instead, and playing both Eriksen and Mount in midfield with Casemiro. The reason being is because one, you can't really trust Bruno defensively in those bigger teams, as well as if he's playing on the right-hand side, he's able to tuck in midfield, help cover potentially more of that box midfield that a lot of other teams are playing, and should allow Rashford more freedom of space on the left wing. Of course, at that point, if Hodgland is starting playing regular minutes, I think that's how you could see them line up. I understand that this does put more stress on the midfield depth and maybe a downside, but I think against those bigger teams where you want more of a defensive reinsurance, you're going to get that from Eriksen instead of Bruno. You're going to have the potential for maybe winning a midfield battle. And it seems like this team, especially with Onana, how they want to be able to play out the back potentially, that's where you want to win. Battles in the middle of the pitch, and if you can outnumber them by having Bruno tuck in, because I don't think you're going to see, similar to a lot of other teams playing, not going to have a midfielder tuck in to out in possession. I don't think that's naturally what they're going to do. There's been some times with Martinez has done that, but I think that against the bigger teams, against the better teams, if you look across the pitch, other than Liverpool, if you're looking at any other lineup, is there a dangerous left wing back that I'm afraid of really going up to the top? No. Not. They're generally going to tuck in, so may as well have Bruno tuck in there too, and help in that midfield position. So I think at their peak, at the biggest games, I think that's how you could see them play. But I think aside from their lineups phase, I think the bigger part is going to be, this is really kind of the start of the Ten Hag ball. I know there's the Ten Hag ball of how they want to play in possession. That's trending on Twitter sometimes. Or is it X? I don't know. Anyway, the point being is that you've seen a lot of trying to play out the back, that possession. I think that's going to be the bigger adjustment to Manchester United fans watching this team, because it's not something they've seen over the last 5 or 6 years. So I think there will be adjustment period there. But eventually down the road, I would like to see them try like I proposed earlier.
Okay, well, in that case, what we have there, Mac, it looks like Antony, there's no spot for him in the starting 11, which will be a huge hit, I think, considering the fee that was paid for him. I actually think he will probably start, though, for most games. Antony, that is, he's a Ten Hag player. He knows, Ten Hag knows what Antony can offer him, and so, that type of, if you have someone that you can rely on, that's what you're going to go with. And similarly, very much like Manu has been playing throughout the last, I guess, couple of seasons with Fernandes. He's sort of that 10 in front of the midfield holding 2. And so I don't see too much change in that for most games. But yeah, interesting to see if there is a potential switch in that. My other concern is when Hodgland is ready to go and Rashford is, fully fit, striker and left wing are taken. Where does that leave a player like Jadon Sancho? And my guess would be in that Bruno Fernandes spot for them to sort of switch on and off if needed. I think, of course, Sancho hasn't had the best time since he's returned to the Premier League, to say the least, and he has had some bright spots throughout his time at Man U, but hasn't been as convincing. I think that when Man U have and Ten Hag has the players that he wants, that would be a great position, because to be perfectly honest, he doesn't have the physicality that a lot of wingers nowadays possess that would allow them to be a threat on 1v1s, but he does have that cleverness and ability to pick a pass, especially if you have a player like Hodgland, when he was at Dortmund and he had Haaland to run in behind to pick those passes. So maybe that's a spot for him, and so that's something that I'll be interested in seeing. But still a lot of changes that could happen, as we pointed out, transfers in and out that could still take place. Gio, now, of course, please pick a key player to watch for potentially a great season or potentially a disappointing season. Who do you think?
I think you have to live and die on Marcus Rashford. I think obviously he had a good bounce back year, but now how does he elevate his game? How does he now not only put numbers up on the score sheet? How does he make everybody around him better? I think that's going to be sort of how he elevates himself as a player. Is he able to increase his skill in terms of his hold up play if he's slotted in as the front striker? Is he able to drop back a little and able to thread that pass? Those little things that the modern day striker can do. I think that's going to elevate his game. He can't just be a heads down, step over, and have a rip on goal type of player. I think we see too much of that. How is he going to elevate his game? And if he elevates his game like that, I think it only makes the front three a little bit more cohesive and more tangible in where everybody plays. And if your striker is able to do that, it only allows the midfield, it only alleviates pressure from the midfield as well. So I think all in all, when it's all said and done, if Rashford is doing well, I think the club is doing well.
Okay, I guess same question to you, Mac. What's your key player to watch for the upcoming season? Man U player.
I'm in a toss-up position right now. I have two players that I think could fight for the same position. I don't know. I assume, Ray, you probably picked the one that I'm not going to choose. So I'm going to pick someone that I actually kind of shuffled out of the starting 11 for a little bit earlier, and it'll be Antony. Reason being, first season under the Prem, 4 goals, not a great return for how much money was spent on him. Had a lot of highlights, I guess. Chio, no, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. There's interesting moments. We'll put it that way. But I think now he's had a full year under the Premier League. This is his second year. If he's going to kick on, this is the year that he has to. And the reason why, in terms of why I pitched and why I think that their best 11, he may not necessarily been it, is because he hasn't shown it yet. And if he's in the position where he's able to stake that claim, where there is no one going to take him out of the team, a la Jadon Sancho, and he's able to kind of lock himself in that position, I think that's what Ten Hag wants. I think that's what Manchester United as a whole really need, considering the amount of money that they spent on him. But this is the year he's got to start off kind of with a heart, like with the ball rolling. He's got to start off well, because he's not the new guy anymore. He needs to really show the stuff, as well as, weirdly enough, if Rashford is moved over onto the wing, it's tough because he's the better defensive winger if Rashford's playing on the other side, because he's actually a little bit gritty, willing to get in a challenge. So I think you can see a lot more potential in him, especially in a team that needs to have that work rate if they're going to win back possession higher up the pitch, which Ten Hag has been asking for. So I think he has the potential to be a talisman, has the potential to kind of symbolize what this team can be, but he needs to start off early. If not, I think he's going to get a lot of the blame, even more so than some of the other teammates around him, because now more of the light's on him, because it's not his first season anymore. So he needs to step up right away. Again, like I said, I think he has the potential to do it. Will he? We'll see.
Okay, no, I like that shout. I'm not exactly sure who you think I'm going to pick, but of course it's my turn, so I'm going to pick the new Man U number 7, and that is, of course, big signing Mason Mount. Of course, big price tag coming in, upwards of 60 mil from Chelsea, and there's a reason why the fee was paid, right? Man U and Ten Hag picked out a position that needed to be strengthened, identified their player early on, and made the call. And of course, he's going to be a big deciding factor on how Man U season goes. Still 24 years old, going to be turning 25 in January. Didn't have the best season for Chelsea last year, but a lot of quality there to make that position his, be one of those first names on the team sheet, and revolutionize his game. Because, of course, he's always been sort of that attacking midfield for Chelsea, whereas in this team, he will probably have to play a little bit deeper, linking the defense with the attacking line. And I think he has that in his locker. Very much like Havertz, though. I hope that Man U fans are patient with him in terms of returns for goals and assists. I don't think he'll hit the ground running with that. I mean, if he does, great. but I think he'll offer a lot more in terms of just fluidity and chance creation from deep, where I think Man U really lacked last season. Where if it wasn't Rashford on hot form or a counterattack goal, it was going to be a difficult time, especially in sort of that after the World Cup period time for Man U. So I think it's going to be a big season for him and a lot to prove for him. So hey, big season, new number for Man U, iconic, and that's going to be my pick.
I want to jump in on that Mount because I think that was the other player I was thinking about as well. I think he's fascinating because I think you brought up an excellent point, and I want to reiterate it. It's because if they don't play well and he's not getting on the score sheet, because he's not going to. 2 years ago, I think he blew out expectations by having, in the Premier League, 11 goals and 10 assists. That's not the type of player this Manchester United team is getting, nor should they want. But if it doesn't go well and he's not on the score sheet, he's going to get a lot of the blame because he's an easy player to potentially pick apart, given that he's had that return previously. And this is something that maybe a casual Manchester United fan would be expecting. Versus if the team's playing well, doing what they need to do, he's going to be very key because he's going to be linking the play between the midfield, between the defense and attack. He's going to be that trying to ghost in behind, trying to find that space, and allow Casemiro to do the dirty work and hopefully try to quickly as possible shuffle and move the ball up to the attacker. So I think he is going to get a lot of the blame or a lot of the credit depending on how this Manchester United team goes. The interesting part will be is that it can't come with the goals and assists because this is a whole new role that he hasn't really played before. I think he could do well. It seems like he's going to do well. It seems like it's something that he really wanted to do. But I think expectations in terms of what you said, goals and assists, those numbers, they have to be set fair. And it's going to be tough if the team's not doing well for a casual fan to look at that and be okay with it.
And of course, expectation is what we're going to be talking about next. So, Gio, what would a good season for Man U look like next season? What are your expectations as a Man U fan?
This one's tough. Obviously, you can't say, like obviously, again, like you mentioned, obviously you're looking for, upward progression. But it's going to be tough. Man City being Man City, obviously they've lost a lot of players, but they're making, again, key signings to replace those bodies. Not huge names by any means, but names that will work. And then Arsenal doing much of the same, addressing a lot of their needs. So it's going to be tough competition. But even if they finish second, and win another cup, I think will be huge for them. But again, the consistency has to be there. No slow start, no early smashing in the season. Playing well against the big six, I think is crucial. And ultimately, where they finish in the Champions League, I think where they finish in the Champions League is gonna kind of tip the scale in. Can we bring that X factor in? If they're looking for that X factor, and whoever that X factor may be. Where they finish in Champions League is going to be massive. So, they don't have to win the Champions League, but where they finish, hopefully at least, quarterfinals. I think that would be a great finish for them in the quarterfinals. And, being in the mix in terms of all the cup competitions. I know it's going to be very tolling on all the players, but I think that's where the depth kind of plays in their favor. And like I said, it's a kind of a good problem to have. So you're able to rotate all these guys. So that's why I stressed having, keeping McTominay and signing a Rombat, as soon as possible. So he can get acquainted into the league as quickly as possible as well.
Okay. Same question, Mac.
I think if you copy and paste the season they had last year, not in terms of, I guess, momentum, but in terms of overall results. But what I mean by this is finishing third in the Premier League, not doing great in Champions League, but still doing decently enough when they eventually get shuffled into Europa League, as well as winning a cup. That's a great season if, at the same time, they completely transform how they play football. I think that is a great season because there's a lot of work that needs to be done and still needs to be done. So this is not, I would argue, Manchester United's kind of final form. They would still need, I would argue, at least maybe 2 more transfer windows to fully have the reset that Ten Hag would want. So I think this time next year, they should be in a position where, okay, now we want to compete. The tough part is, like I said earlier in the podcast, they set the expectation here. They need to do this. If there's a step back, then I think a lot of eyes very quickly, considering everything that's going on surrounding the club, a lot of eyes are going to go unfairly, in my opinion, to a lot of the players and even Ten Hag, because if they finish 5th, which quite possibly could happen, because if they were to finish in the top 4, they need to finish at or above some of the other teams that we've already talked about: Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, Newcastle. They need to have better seasons than 3 out of the 4 of them, which is very tough because a lot of those other teams are expecting to be in a similar position. It's quite possible, but I think that because, like I said earlier, the success of last year, they need to match that. But what a good season, in my opinion, would be is, like I said, if they match that, even got 4th, but they transform their style of football and you see progression there, I think that is a very successful season for Manchester United. Joe, you want to jump in? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. It's just you said Chelsea and Tottenham, and you followed with really tough, so it kind of threw me off. Kind of threw me off a little, but I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same teams. But
100%.
Sure. Okay, let's go.
Completely agree. I mean,
Harry Kane's a better player than every player on Manchester United, so he could easily steal the game if they were to play each other.
I'm
not wrong.
I mean, it's great what he does, but it's not hard to be the star on a tanking ship. So
he would be the star on Manchester United as well. And you?
Absolutely. But
so,
is it hard to be a star on a tanking ship?
No. Everyone could be DeMarcus Cousins, but can you beat Tim Duncan? But again, so I don't know. My opinion is it's not, because of their transition of the team. It may be difficult to match what they did last year, and I think that it's unfair. I would think that it's a little bit tough to be like, oh yeah, top 4, easy, it's done, signed, sealed, delivered. I think there's a lot of challenges to be able to get that again this year.
I do as well agree. Top 4 and a knockout stage appearance for Man U will be a great season moving forward, and then just hope that the consistency is there from the players that you've signed. And I know it's still early on, but still have to move some players, because to be completely honest, looking at the Man U squad right now, there is some depth to it, but if you're comparing it to your Man Cities, your Liverpools up there, there's not a whole great deal of depth yet. So more so, the transforming the squad will be sort of the next step. And so we'll see how this team does. And if a top 4 finish is achieved, you can just hope for as a Man U fan that the next season after this one will be the one where Man U are challenging for those top positions again. So yeah, a lot to see, and still though a lot for the transfer window to play out for us, and so we'll definitely keep an eye out for what happens there. On that note, this concludes our podcast for today. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be next Thursday, when we continue our season preview with Manchester City. Thank you, Mac, for joining us.
I would really love a game 1 for Manchester United, another L. I think that would be a great start to the season.
Thank you, Gio.
Glory, baby. Glory. That's all.
Glory. See you guys soon.